Hello humans and welcome to the Sizzling Scale. Up on the grill today is Atelier Ryza 2, Lost Legends in the Secret Fairy. I initially had no intention of playing this game, and it's actually my first ever game in the Atelier series, but I was intrigued enough to hop into the fray and take a shot at a random application to Koei Tecmo and have them send me a copy to try, and to my surprise, they were very kind enough to do so, so thank you Koei Tecmo for the opportunity, and let's jump right into this. I'm going to start right off with saying that this game is usually not my favorite kind of JRPG to play, but to my surprise, I actually found myself enjoying it immensely. What I thought was going to be pressure to play through it quickly to get a review video out immediately transformed into a borderline obsession as I was completely hooked by this game. I had some days where I'd get up at 6 a.m., 6:05 I had my Switch in my hands. I'll start right off by jumping right into it and talking about the crafting system, which I think is probably the game's strongest element. The system has a level of complexity that I would need to make like a 30-minute video to do it justice. It's insane. It's like if we took the Polyjuice potion from Harry Potter, but we made it so that we can turn anything we gather into anything we want and have it not taste like a sweaty teenager. The general principle is that you craft basically every single item that you use in the game. Weapons, armors, accessories, healing items, buff items, attack items, you name it, you craft it. The alchemy system, which is the crafting system, is also integrated directly into the story and side quests, so you'll be collecting items throughout your journey and then you go back and you craft another item, and that helps you progress in the journey or you help people on their quests. It's completely integrated, it really makes for a seamless experience. You can also always just straight up buy or find weapons, armors, and accessories, but what I really like about the crafting system is that the ones that you craft, you are always rewarded for crafting, so that they'll always be better than what you find in chests in the wild, for example, or things that you can just buy in shops. I even would go as far as to say it's probably necessary to craft stuff that is of high level, even to just get through the game against normal monsters later on. Without getting too much into the complexities, this system is about as deep as a fanservice-y anime girl's cleavage, and you'll find yourself uncovering new recipes and even transforming ones you already have into higher level ones. You basically work your way up an item's progression tree, and you can create some Frankenstein's monster levels of equipment to absolutely destroy the enemies that you go up against. I don't think I can even count how many of my 48.5 hours of playtime were spent just brainstorming how to optimize some of my equipment, inherit the proper skills forward, or even build the best ingredients to then make a certain item as strong as it can be. It's just completely and utterly addicting and rewarding when you spend all that time building your own little murder machine and then you take it into the battlefield and destroy whatever wall you were stuck behind. And speaking of walls, let's talk about the gameplay. I'm putting it out there right now, the difficulty for this game is very deceptive. If you aren't keeping your gear well synthesized and enhanced and up to date, you will get wrecked by some of the bosses in the game very quickly. I won't spoil the final boss, but let's say I didn't make it through the first 10% of its HP bar on my first attempt and I was playing on normal. If all you want to experience is the story and characters, you can easily play on easy, but for those who want a challenge, there are 2 even harder difficulties and a new game plus option that you unlock once you beat the game the first time through. The battle system itself is a fairly familiar ATB system, so if you've played any classic turn-based RPGs, you'll be familiar with this. However, you can only really control one unit at any given moment, while the others execute auto attacks that you can combo off of in some way. You can use up to 4 units in the party at once, 3 of them are active on the field, and 1 of them is in a backline sort of situation that you can switch in. All of the units that you have on the squad will gain EXP together, even the people who aren't in the party, and even if you haven't recruited them yet. All of the new characters that come recruited will arrive at the same level that you are currently on, so you're never really playing catch up with any of the new units, and it's really just plug and play, you can slot them right in there. Even the characters that die in battle can gain EXP, so the system is just completely quality of life centered and you don't really have to feel bad about losing characters. As for the combat system itself, when your ATB gauge fills, you will have the option of executing any one of your actions, with the main ones being normal attacks, skills, and item uses. Using your normal attacks charges something called your AP, which you then use to use skills that can be directly comboed off of your normal attacks. If you combo more than one skill into each other, you get something called CC points. This is a separate command sequence after the ATB that lets you use items depending on how many CCs those specific items cost in turn. The only way to reliably heal, as far as I could tell, is through items, so keeping your CC high is pretty pivotal late in the game, as well as synthesizing good healing items. This is actually one of the things I struggled most with in my playthrough, as you can only control one character and build CC on them at any given time during the battle, so managing healing was often done with my main character since CC isn't really shared among the party, it's unique to every character. In theory, you could probably just be more skilled than I am and micromanage your other characters on the field who can swap freely between each other in order to build up CC on everyone, but I do wish we had some form of reliable healing that was more easily accessible to the player. I also finished the game without ever discovering AoE healing, so yeah, you gotta figure that synthesis system out at some point. Now as for the story, this to me was the most surprising part about this game. I'm going to put it right out there and say that this game lacks the most important thing to me specifically in a video game in general, and that's a villain. And no, I don't mean a good quality villain, it straight up just doesn't have any evil people in it. However, this has to be an exception to my rule because despite that, I found myself really getting immersed in the lore and enjoying the story, even if it wasn't the most gripping or plot twisty story, which is usually my type. There is an overarching plot, but don't expect anything mind-blowing on the level of a Xenoblade or some of the stronger Final Fantasy titles. The story is also very self-contained, so despite this being a sequel to the previous game, you actually don't need any knowledge of the previous game to experience this one's story and understand it. I never even played the original. I was fine. It does make references to the first one though, and maybe someone can correct me in the comments if I missed anything in specific in terms of these references, but I really didn't see anything that was like a requirement for me to have played the first one. The game is a wholesome adventure that revolves around a group of friends, some old and some new, that run around exploring the old ruins and trying to decipher the lore of the world that they live in. The way that the exploration mechanics are weaved into the lore of the game is so well written that I can't really put into words how excited I was to be investigating and discovering new pieces of information to try and put together the pieces of the puzzle myself before the cast was able to do so. The game actually never really tells you up front what happens in the lore, or I guess it does, but it lets you put it together yourself and read the information that it provides you outside of the main storyline, and I think that was done extremely effectively. Part of me almost wishes that Koei Tecmo would create a whole game around the origins of the lore in this one, because I think that would be really cool to play and experience firsthand. So if they're watching, wink wink, please. I beg you, it's so good. Other than that, I think the characters themselves are all very effective. I expected it to be a happy-go-lucky, cheerful crowd of characters that just win through the power of friendship, and while there is an element of that, I'm not gonna lie, if you take the time to actually talk to these characters in the side quests and do their side stories, you'll be able to pull back the bedsheets and expose their naked bodies to really dive much deeper into understanding who they are, what their personal struggles are, how they are coping and trying to deal with them throughout their journeys as well. Outside of the initial cast, you also get to make connections with different people in the city you're in and learn more sort of about the NPCs and the general atmosphere of the city, like the farmers, the blacksmith, the waitress in the cafe. And you don't really see that very often in a lot of RPGs. Like this one goes pretty deep. You get to learn a lot about these guys' personalities and what the day-to-day life of theirs are. I thought that was really cool, and it gives it a level of personality that you don't always get in a lot of games, so it was quite a nice touch. A lot of the general cast returns from the previous game, and while I'm not really familiar with them, I assume those who are will be overjoyed to continue to see them develop and grow. I think it's a 2 or 3 year time skip between the first and second game. So it's not that major, but it is significant enough that these characters have had enough happen in the past that you can learn about sort of the gap that happened and how they coped with it. And even with my limited knowledge of these characters, I was very pleased with what I saw, so I'm sure the fans of the previous one will be more than happy with it. Also, the character designs are great. They're all really, really cool. The last thing I'll talk about are the music and visuals. The art for this game is beautiful. It's stunning. The areas are so vibrant and they're well pieced together, and it was very pleasurable to explore them all. There was some underwater exploration that I think was a bit of a missed opportunity, and I hope that they can make that a bit more engaging and nice to look at. But overall, no complaints here. I played this on the Switch, so I did experience the occasional frame drops after loading screens if I immediately started rifling through menus or something. but the combat was mostly smooth and the exploration was fine as well. The music is also very pleasant and soothing for the most part, and it has a couple of fast-paced tracks depending on the situation. Not generally my cup of tea since I like to click on those epic anime 2-hour compilation videos, but it was different and overall very relaxing at the least. Overall, I actually really enjoyed this game to the point where I had 48.5 hours sunk into it in over about a week or so to complete it. I didn't 100% it, but I came fairly close, so it's not the longest game, but it's fairly long and has a decent amount of content, definitely worth the visit. I definitely enjoyed every moment of it. There were a few moments that were frustrating while looking for certain crafting materials, for example, but overall, I think we can safely plug the sizzling scale into this piece of meat and measure it at a solid 8 degrees of sizzle. If you want a refreshing and wholesome experience that is a more relaxed JRPG game, I can definitely recommend that you get this one. Thank you everyone for watching this episode of the Sizzling Scale. Don't forget to comment below with what games you would like to see on the Sizzling Scale coming up soon, and whether or not you were able to guess what the next game coming up is. I'll catch you all in the next video, and until then, peace.